Welcome to College Compass by experts at scholarship.org. My name is Tim Snow. I'm your host. As president of the George Snow Scholarship Fund, I've spent the last 40 years empowering young people and ensuring that they have the access to resources that they need to succeed in their educational journeys. In each of these episodes, I'm going to sit down with experts to provide you with practical advice to help students overcome challenges, thrive, and get ahead. In today's episode, I want to share the story behind the George Snow Scholarship Fund, the background on the Scholarship Fund, scholarship.org. I want to explain our mission to you and how that has evolved over the years. I guess the best place to start is to start talking about who was George Snow. He was my father, number one. He was born in 1935. His parents, his dad was a steel worker. His mother was a housemaker. My dad was not a particularly good student. He wasn't an athlete, but he worked very hard, and he always had a job after school. He was very much entrepreneurial, even long before the term ever became popular. And he was the first in his family to attend college. So my dad actually grew up in western Pennsylvania. And at the age of 23, he was tired of the cold winters and thought it would be a great idea to pack up his modest belongings, head to South Florida to a little town, sleepy town at that time called Boca Raton. And he took a job as a high school math teacher at a school called Seacrest High School in Delray Beach, Florida. And Delray is the town just north of us here in Boca Raton. So as a teacher, he was really only working 9 months a year during the school year, and that left him 3 months to do something else. And so he took a job with a gentleman that he knew from up north that was building houses. And my dad did that with him over a couple of summers, and then realized that this is something he might want to pursue further, started his own company. And he really tried to balance the teacher, being a teacher and running a construction company. I don't think he did a very good job at that balance, but I can remember as a very young man him coming home telling my mother that he was just fired. And so essentially I think the principal said, look, you can pick teaching, you can pick construction, but you can't do both. And my dad chose to go into the real estate and construction fields. My father would definitely tell you that he was in the right place at the right time. Boca Raton really took off. The growth of our community really took off with the creation of FAU, which was in the early 60s. Also, the creation of our hospital. And at that time, shortly after that, IBM decided to have a big presence in Boca Raton. So my dad was in the construction world, definitely in a super great spot. And so with all the influx of those employees coming in to man jobs at FAU, at the hospital, with IBM, my father ended up building over 2,000 homes and apartment complexes in the area. Many of our city's places of worship, many apartment buildings, as I think I mentioned, and a lot of the strip malls and smaller office buildings in town. And in the early 70s, his company was doing very well. When my parents moved down here in 1958, it was just my sister and I and my mom and dad, and so our family grew with my brother Jeff and my sister Lisa being born. And my dad was he was always behind the scenes doing really kind of good works, but it was very quiet. He didn't, wasn't out there thumping his chest or anything, but I like to tell a story. In the early 70s with the integration of the school system, they were busing a lot of young people from Delray into Boca Raton. And those young people couldn't participate in extracurricular activities like football or cheerleading or band because those practices were after school. and they weren't running buses after school. And so my dad lobbied the school board, and he did this with a couple of people, a handful of business leaders, and the school board denied their request for a bus for these young people. So my dad and those business leaders got together and purchased a bus, and my father actually drove it so that the kids could, participate and become part of school life like all high school students should be able to do. So he always had a strong work ethic. He tried to instill that in his children, and he tried to help other people. And so shortly after his company was doing really, really well, he had a health crisis. He thought he wasn't gonna make it. So I think that changed his attitude towards work and certainly the work-life balance. And so shortly after that, he decided he wanted to kind of dial back a lot with the building and then just sort of manage his own real estate holdings. And he had a couple of apartment complexes at the time as well. But that left him a lot of time, so he was pursuing his passion for travel. He loved the ski. He was a big boater. And my family's always been into aviation. And so he had some friends that had helicopters, and so he ended up purchasing a helicopter and learned to fly it and actually became very good at it. And that kind of became his next vocation, if you will. He created a helicopter charter service. We actually had at our home our own FAA licensed helipad, fuel pumps. We kept the helicopter in the barn. And so, as I said, he became kind of in demand. I think it was one of the bureau chiefs that said that he was a photographer's pilot, that he was always able to get the helicopter in a place that gave the photographer really his best chance of getting the shot. And so, again, being in the right place at the right time, at that time in the very early 80s, really it may have been late 79, but 80, the Mariel boat lift took place. And so that was when Fidel Castro allowed, I think, about 100,000 Cuban natives to immigrate into the United States, but they did that through a boat lift, and they all came across from Cuba into Key West. So my dad would fly the networks to cover that story, and that was a big story at the time. He made a lot of friends down there in Key West, and a lot of the helicopter pilot, the Coast Guard people, they all kind of became very close to each other during that time. So as I said, my dad was kind of a go-to guy on some of these more difficult missions. There was a story called Cayo Lobos, which many people don't probably know. But again, in the late 70s and early 80s, Haitians began fleeing Haiti. They had a ruler down there, a dictator by the name of Baby Doc Duvalier. He was not good for the country, and so a lot of people were leaving and coming, trying to immigrate either to the Bahamas or to the United States. And there was a group of 113 Haitians that were stranded in their effort to get either to the Bahamas or to the United States on an island called Cayo Lobos. And it got the interest of the networks. And like I said, my dad was kind of the go-to guy for these logistically difficult missions. And so my dad was hired to take a news crew down there. It was definitely logistically difficult, particularly because of the range of the helicopters would not allow them certainly to get from the United States there. And one of the closest islands with any kind of a landing strip, which the helicopters didn't need, but I'll explain that in a second, was in Congo Town on the island of Abaco. I'm sorry, Andros Island, not Abacos. In any event, they concocted a plan where my dad would fly the helicopter down to Congo Town. He'd be met there by a Learjet, And if you remember, the old Learjets had the wingtip fuel pods, fuel tanks, and they refueled my father's helicopter there. And then he went on down to Cayo Lobos to cover the story of the stranded Haitians. It was still logistically tough. I remember talking to him on the phone the night before, figuring out the distance between Congo Town and Cayo Lobos. And there was a very small margin of error in terms of the range of the helicopter. In any event, they did it. They went down there, and it's actually a very interesting story. I brought this as a article that Boca Raton Magazine did some years ago. But if you had any interest, we post that on our website on scholarship.org. It's actually a very fascinating story, which could be a great subject for another podcast, but it's much too detailed and too long to talk about right now. But cutting to the bottom line is that's where my dad lost his life. We got a phone call the following morning saying his helicopter did not return back home. And so my brother and I was living in Fort Myers at the time, and my brother was a student at University of Florida. We flew down here and basically started a month-long search for my dad. We never found him. We never found the remains of any of the passengers on the helicopter, including my father. We did find a very small piece of the wreckage almost a month later, but it's still a mystery as to what happened. And we don't know. But I guess the point I'm trying to make is that was certainly a tragedy for my family, but we all got together and decided we wanted to turn that tragedy into something good. And so with that in mind, the friends of my father, many of my friends, my dad's friends, my brother and I and my sisters got together and we decided we're going to create a scholarship fund to memorialize him. And we did that intentionally because of his strong interest in education and the good works that he was doing while he was alive. And we wanted to continue that. I think there's a misconception that my dad started this while he was alive, and he didn't do that. And there's another misconception that he funded it with an endowment or a life insurance policy or something. And that's not the case either. Every penny that we've ever given away has been raised in our community. So just to kind of go through the history and the evolution of the scholarship fund, I'll just tell you a couple things. You know, the first year we gave away $8,000 to 3 students. And we would do that. We would get funding from that by hosting a fundraiser every year. But we kept seeing more and more young people that we wanted to help, but we just didn't have the money to help. And so in 1991, the board came to me, asked me if I was interested in doing this full time. At the time, I was building homes and, well, mostly building homes, a little bit of real estate. But it was really something that got my interest. And so I started in 1991, focusing all my time on the scholarship fund, trying to raise money, and we were gradually increasing the number of scholarships that we would give every year. And as I said, we were able to, every year we gave away more and more money. And then we started seeing something interesting. We started really paying attention to our students, and we would see young people that we really thought were going to do really well in school. But they'd go off to school and some of them would drop out. And what we learned was they just weren't prepared. They didn't have a support system at home that was giving them advice, helping them through challenges. And with that, a lot of them just decided to give it up. So that was kind of the beginning of this evolution that we experienced in not just giving young people financial scholarships, but providing support systems so that they can maximize their college experience and have a great chance of graduating. The first program that we created for them was something we called our high school to college transition program. And basically, that was a day-long workshop that was teaching them things like what you should be doing in your first 2 weeks of school, time management, campus safety, how college really is different from high school, especially as it relates to your relationship with your college professors. And so that really has been a great program of ours. We get great feedback from the kids. We still have it to this day. And we really enjoy modifying that content every year to meet the needs of our scholars. But it really kind of taught us that we need to learn from our kids, see what they need. And so by doing that, we changed our philosophy, and that essentially we just said we're going to help these young people just like we would help our own sons and daughters. And so we started adding programs to meet those needs. We learned that a lot of kids had emergency situations, non-recurring, unexpected expenses. And a lot of times those small expenses could make it so a student can't continue with their college education. So we created an emergency fund, which we still have for all of our scholars. We also learned that many of our scholars were going away to college without a computer. And this was a while ago when we created this program, but even at that time, that was a necessary tool for our scholars to have, and they didn't have that. So we created a college computer program. And we just kept adding different programs every year as we would see and hear what our scholars' needs were. In 2015, we were actually recognized by the National Scholarship Providers Association as their Scholarship Provider of the Year. This was a huge honor for us, especially for an organization of our size. That puts us in the same class as the big boys in the country, the Michael Susan Dell Foundation Scholars Program, the Ron Brown Scholars Program, Coca-Cola, Jack Kent Cooke. So that was a real feather in our cap. But I really believe the reason that we were recognized with that award was that we are helping our scholars far beyond the financial commitment that we're making to them. And also what we're helping them with in many ways is just as important to them as the financial commitment. So that's kind of who we are. Actually, I'll just take a second to go through some of those programs because I think they're interesting. I had mentioned the college computer program. We get their college physicals for them. We give them a gift bag full of dorm supplies. We have, as I mentioned, the emergency fund. We send them a Monday motivational message every year. We actually now have a scholar closet where our scholars can come and pick out whatever clothing that they want, brand new shoes, all at no cost to them. We got the winter coming up, so they're coming in now getting winter coats that they don't have from living in South Florida. We do senior portraits of them. We found that many of our students couldn't afford that, so we do that for our scholars. We do a lot of master classes for them. We just did a dining etiquette class at a local restaurant here, which was really great. And our newest program, one of our newest programs, is a career development curriculum. And so I look at that sort of as a little bit of icing on the cake in the sense that we're training or we're getting these young people from college or through college, but really what we're trying to do is get them great jobs when they graduate. And so we're teaching them interview skills, resume writing skills, basically, business etiquette, all the things that they're going to need in order to get the best job when they graduate. So that's really what we are all about. And now you know who we are. So, over the last 40 years, we've been identifying the best and the brightest in our county, which is Palm Beach County, Florida. We're awarding them much needed funding to attend college or vocational school. And then we nurture them through that educational journey. Since 1982, we've done this with over 3,000 students. And this year alone, we were able to do it with over $5 million in funding, and we helped almost 400 students just this year. So I want to thank you for tuning in to College Compass by experts at scholarship.org. In our next episode, we're going to share exclusive tips for scholarship applications. So if you're a high school senior filling out applications now for scholarships, you'll want to tune into that. And don't forget to follow us on our social media for more tips and updates. You can find us on Instagram and LinkedIn at George Snow Scholarship Fund, and on Facebook, TikTok, and X at Snow Scholarship. We look forward to guiding you through your educational journey.